Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait a minute for everyone to join. Hope everyone's doing okay.
Yes,
Was that Anita?
yes. Okay.
Anita was also highlighted on the Healthy School Meals for All Instagram, so I will find that and drop it in the chat here while we're waiting.
She says so.
All right. So we got some folks on. We're a couple minutes in. This is a little bit different meeting for today, I think, because there's so much stuff happening in the state of Wisconsin. There's also so much stuff happening in Washington, D.C. But first, we're going to go through and introduce some of the leaders of the coalition. So first, my name is Matt Steenstra. I'm the advocacy and director of advocacy and community engagement at Feed America East Wisconsin. Allison,
Hey
introduce yourself.
everyone, Allison Papp Harris, REAP Food Group, nonprofit based in Madison, Wisconsin, and myself and our executive director, Phil Kauth, who's not on the call today, are part of the Healthy School Meals for All leadership team. I'll turn things to Caitlin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin Tarianen. I'm the Child Nutrition Coordinator for the Ashwaubenon School District and the current SNA Wisconsin president. And my co-SNA member is Stacy Nelson, and she's dealing with some stuff in the kitchen right now. So she's hoping to be on a little bit later if she can.
Um, I'm happy to see everyone on the call. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about what's happening in Washington, D.C., and why should we care? Because this is stuff that just comes up all the time in questions. I'm sure you all have either asked questions about this stuff or have gotten asked questions about this. And I think it's important to know a process that we've gone through at Feeding America Agency in Wisconsin is trying to separate headlines versus what gets written in policy, and what is actually cut versus what is actually saved, and going from there. So the things that I want to talk about are the main pieces that can actually really impact school meals across the country and in Wisconsin. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the actual Healthy School Meals for All budget resolution. We're going to talk about the bill, what we can do, what we have been doing. But I think this piece is really important because I think it adds an extra reason why the need for the state to step up in times like this is something that we need to be able to communicate. So the four big things that can happen. And I'm going to pause at different places and ask their questions too. Please pipe into the chat any comments, questions, things that don't make sense, or things that I could be missing. So we have four big areas. First is budget reconciliation. I'll go through that in detail. They get a chance to do that again. There's government funding bills, like what happened in mid-March. So when the government gets close to a shutdown, they got to pass a bill to keep the lights on. And oftentimes what happens is they include extra little measures in there that could or might not impact school meals. And then there's the farm bill, which is the biggest bill of them all. So where are we at in budget reconciliation right now? Budget reconciliation gets talked about, and a lot of folks on this call might know what it is. A lot of folks might not know, but it was used by the democratically controlled Congress under the Biden administration. It's being used now under the Trump or Republican controlled Congress because you don't need 60 votes in the Senate to advance measures. You just need 51. So if you have a simple majority in the Senate, the House, and you have the presidency, gosh, you can get this done. And this impacts spending. And so here's where things are at in the process, because there's always headlines and things stop and go and stop and go. So first, both the House and the Senate have to set targets on what we're cutting, how much is going to get cut from every single department in the government. That happened in February. Then each house, both the Senate and the House, have to pass their blueprint. So kind of agreeing to these are the cuts that we say we're going to be making. And the House just passed their blueprint like a couple hours ago. So both of those went through the House and the Senate right now. Then the next step is the committees deciding what to cut. So right now, the Committee on Agriculture, Committee on Education, all these committees have to go through and say, okay, I got to cut target of 100 billion, of 50 billion. I need to figure out actually how to reach that target. So that's the process they're going to go through next. Then the House and the Senate have to somehow come together and make sure that they can reconcile their differences and pass, as the president likes to call it, one big beautiful bill, to and one final bill that is the same for both the House and the Senate, and the president signs it. Then they can do this all over again. So you can do this 2 times. The timeline where we are right now and where people have thought is that June, August, sometime this summer, is when this gets finalized. Maybe early summer is when it gets finalized. It's been tough for them to stick to their timelines, but I think it's important to know that they really wanted to be able to get this done by April 11th in the House, and they were able to find a way to get this done. So how far apart are the House and the Senate in the Department of Agriculture, which is one of the biggest ones that concerns our work? The House said you gotta cut at least $230 billion. The Senate said you have to cut at least $1 billion. That's really far apart, right? That's super far apart. So they have to find a way to come together. The word is that they might be coming together closer around 70 billion, but that's still a lot. So that's why one of the things I want to go over, I tried to draw a bell curve and it didn't work out very well. But what's most likely? Because there's the worst case scenario, which is just everything gets stripped. There's the best case scenario, nothing gets stripped. Both of those are probably not very probable. That's a weird way of saying it. But the most likely scenario is like some things get cut, some things don't. What does this actually look like? So I'm going to go through, play a little game called Cut, Chatter, or Safe. And what is something that has actually been cut? What is something that has gotten talked about but hasn't happened yet? And what is something that actually has gotten approved and, knock on wood, is safe? I think something important to note is right now, the way things have been generally progressing is things that get cut are things that have been talked about. So there has been signaling before something actually happens. So first, LFS. That is something that I know a lot of folks on this call know about. Status, it is cut. So the impact is 660 million in funds for local foods across the country, $11 million just in Wisconsin this fiscal year. And it's extra tough when paired with LFPA. So LFPA is the local food purchases that food banks make, where we purchase from Wisconsin growers and be able to provide them the food pantries. So essentially, schools and families got kind of a double hit on the ability to get more local foods into the system. But I want to point out that farm to school, just because LFS got cut, it's a bummer. It's a big bummer. But because it got cut, farm to school is still real. It is a thing, and it is happening. Some members of our coalition leadership have been in the news talking about this recently. There was an article that just came out. Wisconsin schools cancel local farm partnerships due to federal cuts. Both Stacy Nelson and Caitlin talked a little bit more about the impact of like what this means from a school's perspective. Caitlin, can you just weigh in a little bit more on context of like your viewpoint on this cut, what it means, et cetera?
Yeah, so we mostly work with an aggregator in my area who has kind of pulled together, I think it's something around 40 farms in around the state, mostly in our section of the state, but around the state as a whole. And they received about $250,000 last year. Now that was above and beyond what we would typically purchase. So we are still able to make those purchases that we did before LFPS started. However, that huge momentum that we were gaining in farm to school is going to be a lot more difficult for schools to, continue that momentum moving forward. Fortunately, schools find so much value in farm to school that, again, the program's not going to be cut, like Matt said. It's just that this additional funding that was so helpful to both our students and our farmers is no longer an option for us.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions on the LFS cuts? What people have been hearing, what the impact could be? All right, cut, chatter, safe. Community eligibility provision. Folks might have heard this getting talked about. It is in the chatter right now. So it isn't, the chatter is not the, so what is community eligibility provision? It's basically a way for schools or school districts to opt in to doing school meals for every kid at no charge. If you are eligible, if you have at least 25% of your kids that are quote unquote identified students, which means that they participate in programs like food share, foster kids, there's any of the income verifiable programs where the family has to verify their income as being low income. What they want to do, something that gets talked about a lot more, is limiting eligibility to schools at 60% of the kids that identified or greater. What would that mean? It would mean 309 schools and 107,000 students would be impacted, and they'd no longer be able to attend a school that serves both breakfast and lunch at no charge. Obviously, some of those kids would still be eligible for free or reduced price meals, but the stigma, the ability for every kid to be able to get the meals with no charges taken away. School meal debt, which is already, in a really troublesome place, would increase further. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Actually, I'm going to go to that next. So before I go to the other one. So when we look at CEP and the impact and what this actually could mean in the state of Wisconsin, in 23-24, we had 647 schools and about 225,000 students participating. That increased by 39 schools and 14,000 students last year to 686 schools and 240,832 students. So this is a program that grows in popularity. Schools are finding different ways to use it, but the proposed cuts would be huge. We're talking about, when we think about the number of schools that this is and the number of kids, it's enough kids to fill Lambeau Field and their Pfizer Forum, and another big theater. Just as an example of how many kids it is. And when we think about what schools could get impacted, I'm using a lot of the stuff that I've laid to from FRAC. They put together a list of all the school districts and the number of schools and children that are impacted by this. You can see it here, but then what I did is I went through and I linked to a Google Sheet that has all the names of all the schools. So it says schools impacted, for instance, in Sheboygan. Well, we have a list of all those schools there. So we'll get that out when we send these slides, and you can take a look and see, would your school or school in your community be one of the ones that would be losing access to free school meals in this way? And again, I'm borrowing heavily from FRAC, who is a supporter and partner in this work, and they put together a really neat one-pager on what this would look like.
Matt,
All right.
Can I
Yeah,
chime
go
in
ahead.
one more thing that I think a lot of people forget about? So like my school, for instance, doesn't do CEP, and sometimes I look at this and think, oh, that's not going to affect, Ashwaubenon students or whatever. But if we think about one of our main points for our Healthy School Meals for All bill, that is that we're maximizing federal programs. So I'm currently at 25.8% of my students who are qualifying for CEP, which means that I could maximize federal funding. And that's a huge portion of funding that the state would in turn have to cover if we ever did Healthy School Meals for All, if that were to go away. So this does affect all of the schools in our state, whether, it's immediate impact or down the line impact.
That's a great point, Caitlin. So the loss of these schools and students means the cost of school meals for all could increase dramatically. In the state of Wisconsin, but any states, especially states that have already passed healthy school meals for all legislation. There's something else in the chatter category called broad-based categorical eligibility. And what is this? This makes it so that households that already participate in a separate income verified program are automatically eligible for food share SNAP. And then, indirectly, like things like free school meals. By eliminating this, not only does it like increase a lot of administrative burden, because then you have to like separately apply for it. It reduces the communication and synergy between things like DHS and DPI. Thousands of families would be disenrolled from the food share program unless they applied separately. It increased a ton of administrative burdens and costs for school districts. It lowered the amount of children that receive free school meals. And when that happens, that causes a cascade of impacts for school districts as well. Everything from like, other federal funding sources. It would make harder for schools to be eligible to be able to serve summer meals free to all students. CACFP or after school meals could be impacted as well. The number of families that receive summer EBT, which I'll talk about in a little bit too, that could all be impacted. So it seems like a small thing, small administrative thing, but this is a major win for families and for administrators to be able to make sure that kids are connected to more meals. Summer EBT, now that I talked about that one, summer EBT status is safe, fingers crossed. So summer EBT is something that really it debuted last year. And this is a $54 million program in the state of Wisconsin that provides 450,000 kids with $120 in grocery benefits. Last year, it came out around mid-June, I think June 22nd or so, when it came out. And school districts, DPI, worked with DHS to make sure that any kid that was, able to receive free meals would be eligible to receive this benefit, either directly onto their Quest card or they would get mailed an EBT card. It's a huge economic impact and help to families in the summer when childhood hunger peaks. And the worry was, so for months, 0 states, January through the end of March, no states got approved to be able to got their plans approved by the USDA for summer EBT. But just last week, the state of Wisconsin got its plan approved. The timeline that was sent out in February is still the same timeline, and data needs to get updated by some point in May, and June 7th is the targeted date for families to be able to start to receive benefits. I want to address a couple other things that will drastically impact families' ability to be able to afford school meals and the broader picture of childhood hunger, and make it more difficult for free school meal advocates. So one of the biggest targets right now, so there's been a lot of organizing and work to protect Medicaid. And what has happened is just by domino, a lot of elected officials, moderate Republicans, have been saying, I'm not going to vote for anything that has any sort of cuts to Medicaid. But then they're shifting their eyes towards SNAP or food share as a place to kind of shoulder all of the cuts. I'm going to go through things that are very real that they're talking about. So one is changing the calculation on how families receive SNAP or food share. It essentially means that it's the benefit is not going to rise with inflation anymore. And that's going to be about a $221 million loss in benefits just in Eastern Wisconsin, where we work, each year, about $70 a month for families. That's across the whole state of Wisconsin. So again, you're thinking families are going to have less money to buy groceries with, increases the value of school meals even more. Expanded work requirements. I think this is really going to impact the ability of kids to receive free school meals if the state doesn't take action. Because what they're looking to do under SNAP or food share is increase the people that are subject to work requirements. So right now, if you're between the ages of 18 and 54, you don't have a kid in the household. You don't have a kid in the household. You don't have a disability. You got to work 80 hours a week in order to stay eligible for benefits. But they want to expand it. And one of the places that they're looking to expand it outside of increasing the age limit to 60 is families with school age kids. And if you expand it to families with school age kids and you take the average rate of disenrollment, which is happening right now, so estimates are in Milwaukee that just had to undergo this starting in January because they lost a geographical waiver. It's about 1 in 5 conservatively. It could be bigger than this. For every one person, let me back up and say this. 1 in 5 people that are receiving food share lost their benefits. So you expand that across the whole state of Wisconsin. I mean, you're really looking at around maybe 80,000 families losing food share benefits. Looking at a lot of families, if they do expand this to school families with school age children, finding a way to meet a work requirement, complete the paperwork, cut through all the red tape while you're figuring out how to do childcare with kids at home can be incredibly difficult. And the rate of disenrollment could be even higher. And the problem is not only are people losing food share, but then they're losing their automatic eligibility to be able to receive free school meals. They're also looking at this very strongly for Medicaid. So if you think about in the state of Wisconsin, and food share is a drop in the bucket compared to Medicaid. If you have families with school age kids that have to meet a work requirement for Medicaid as well, it's the same type of thing. And when they first kicked this off in the state of Wisconsin, work requirements under SNAP back in 2015, for every one person that found a job, 7 people lost benefits. And the training that you get, it just gets diluted. It gets really tough. No job agency is set up to be able to receive that. And again, families have less income. They're not eligible for free school meals anymore directly through direct certification, and it makes it tougher. ISPs, identified student percentage for community eligibility, would drop significantly. States share the load. What they want to do is make under both Medicaid and food share, states take on a larger percentage of issuing the benefit. This is a big problem because it eats up the state budget. Luckily, the state of Wisconsin has probably about a $2 billion revolving budget surplus, which is incredible. But we also know, everyone on this call, how tough it is to get the state to spend an extra $10 in a place, let alone an extra 130, 150, 170, $300 million, which is what it would cost to be able to shoulder even a 10 or 20% share of the benefit. Congress has continuously said that they're not going to cut people's individual benefits. But what Congress has told us is that this is their way around it, is to say, we're going to make the states cut people. So what would generally happen is, as you make a state say you have to share a massive amount of the cost, is states would increase red tape and make it harder for people to access both Medicaid and food share or SNAP, and people would drop off the program. And again, how does this connect? It's less people being enrolled in this, having a harder time to be able to qualify for receiving free school meals, and making it even more important the state does what it can. Then the Farm Bill is going to decide funding levels for all these programs, right? As it relates to food. It's a $500 billion bill, and we haven't had one. We were supposed to have one, I think, like 2 years ago now. 2018, 2023 is when it was supposed to pass. It's good for 5 years. Right now, the Senate is targeting September, but we don't know. The way that they're looking at the Farm Bill right now is a catch-all to do any extra cuts that they didn't get to in this budget reconciliation process. So through September, it's just going to be a year of trying to avoid cuts at the federal level and to see how the state of Wisconsin can help plug the gaps. This is also another reason why what we've heard with the state budget in the state of Wisconsin is looking at more like a September timeline for that too. So a lot of this is waiting to see how things in Washington play out, to see what the state of Wisconsin can and should do to help make sure that families can be protected. The last thing to know is government funding bills. This is another way for people to do catch-alls in catching up to spending cuts that they didn't get to in other places. March 14th was a bill that funded the government through September. And in this bill, it did everything from protect WIC, although I should have included that. WIC is safe. WIC got funded in the last funding bill, to doing small cuts in other types of nutrition programs. March 14th it passed, and then September is when the deadline. So September could be a busy fall for a lot of things in Washington and Madison. So what are we doing about it? Actually, I want to pause. Before I get to what are we doing about it. Any other questions? My goal is to try and explain not just what's happening in Washington, but just also how it relates to the work that we're doing to advance healthy school meals for all. What are we doing about it? We're doing a lot. So I know Anita was on earlier. So I took some of the photos that we took for when we were in the state budget listening session. Was that last week? That was just last
Yeah.
week.
Right.
Talking to elected officials. I believe we've had people at every single state budget listening session. There's a couple more that we're going to be able to be at as well. This is an opportunity to make sure that we're stating the case and telling personal stories about why this is important. Allison shared something that was sent out by Wisconsin Public Education Network. And, food and nutrition is one of the top 10 things that people have been mentioning during these hearings. And the other thing we're doing is not only are we growing a coalition, I think I want everyone to be aware of how broad and strong this coalition is. This is the list of all of the organizations, just organizations, not individuals, that have signed up to say that they're going to try and advance this type of legislation in the state of Wisconsin. It goes on here too. Is 141 organizations and more than 60 individuals, parents, community members that have all joined. And not only does this obviously have complete 72 county coverage, this is an incredibly broad and diverse group of organizations from a ton of different sectors that have all joined to say that we want to advance this. So everyone on the call, like, you're part of something that's really big, really broad, and when we bring everything together, we can make a huge, huge impact. We have a number of opportunities to keep pushing and making that impact. And I hope you can tell from looking at what's happened in Washington, D.C., it shows how we really just can't sit back and wait, and we need to do something. We have 2 more state budget listing sessions happening in Hayward and Wausau, April 28th and 29th. Come hang out with me in Wausau. I'll be there. You can attend in person and sit all day together. I got to the one in West Dallas at 6:45 a.m. and I spoke at about 12:30 p.m. So you get there early and you get to speak a little bit earlier than others. If you can't make it, you can submit written testimony, and it is still very important to be able to do that. You can also go online, find your own elected official, and I think by now they have their state budget buddy. I think they do. So every single elected official, even if they're not on this powerful committee, they have, it's actually called a buddy that is on the Joint Committee on Finance, that they will take messages from their constituents and relay it to that specific person. So you can tell your own elected official as well. That's what I have. I'm gonna stop sharing now. Any questions? Any comments?
I had a question. I'm sorry. I was trying to get the question before you passed. When you went back to the school lunches, are they going back to filling out the application? Or they are automatic just going back if you previously had free lunch and breakfast?
Nope. So, yeah, I didn't. One, that is in the chatter and it's not cut. So that is not changed. It's that type of stuff has been talked about. And I didn't even talk about, I mean, Caitlin Allison, we've talked about this before too. Another thing that was on the docket is making school districts actually go through and verify free reduced price meal eligibility with families. That is another incredibly burdensome thing. I have no idea how school districts would do that. But no, Anita, that is not changing. Like,
Okay. Also, the other
as of
question,
right now, the only thing that was cut on there was the LFS and LFPA, the local food purchasing.
okay.
That is the
Also,
only change that has actually happened.
Also, the other question that I had too, maybe it might not pertain to this, are they still thinking about cutting more schools on the northeast side of Milwaukee so that they can put the kids all in one school so that they can have more of a turnout so that they can get that state funding?
That is if anyone else is here that is well versed in all things MPS, I would ask you to hop in. I do not know the answer to that question.
Because I was told they're getting ready to close 9 more schools, and they're going to bust them into another school so that they have enough attendance, so they'll be able to get that state funding for participating in the breakfast and the lunch program.
I don't know the answer to that. I think all I know is that, like, even just hearing you talk about that, about just how dire the situation is and how important it is for schools to be able to find funding for education and for food. But I don't know. I have no insight to any of that.
But I can update you more on it, Anita. The short answer is yes, and that's very, very urgent for Milwaukee Public Schools is to close schools, so that they get more students in one building and then have enough money to be able to fund all the programs that are educational. So it doesn't really have that kind of an impact. But I do want to emphasize, Matt, if it were to be that we lose that ability to go through the direct certification process to verify, and then we have to do lunch applications, number one, and to do verification at Milwaukee Public Schools. At one point, when in the old days, when when we did it that way, before we were actually using much in the way of direct certification, I had 16 people staffed in a lunch application office that basically started the 1st of August and went through October, when we actually had to do the verification. And the verification process is, parents, you come in, you bring us pay stubs or benefit stubs or some other verification of income. And if you don't bring it in, or you don't show up, you lose your benefit. And we send out letters, but it's an arduous process. So it's like pushing people to have to go to that creates a burden on all districts if they're going to have to go into that verification process, because it's a time crunch. And I mean, Caitlin or other small to mid-sized school districts, that oftentimes that job falls on the food service director and his or her assistant. That's it. So it's crazy the amount of time and energy that it takes, takes away from your daily operations. Would be horrible.
Yeah, so to put it in perspective, when we verify in Ashwaubenon, we have 3,200 students here, and we verify, I think it's 3 or 4 families to see that they actually qualify for free and reduced meals. And the application process, Anita, is true. You'd have to verify every single year, or you'd have to apply every single year. Direct cert makes it easier for families to qualify because they don't have to fill out that paperwork and do those kind of things. But yeah, to verify 1,600 kids in our district would be a huge burden on our department. And
Not
we're
to
small.
not to mention the families. I mean, it's hard enough, but I have seen families come in and bring their pay stubs and cry. I mean, it's like embarrassing. It's a form of shaming, and it's not intended to be that way, but it just feels like that. It's really a difficult situation.
Right. And due to the way things are set up now, where parents are working, because you have to go to work now, it's hard. Like I said, I can speak on my daughter, which is working 2 jobs. Okay. Where is the time here to submit all of this paperwork?
Yeah.
You can't afford to miss work, because like I said, at Housing Authority, they lost funding. And that means that they're not helping with the rent in Housing Authority. So she has to pay that. So it's getting real hard now. I mean, and that's why I'm getting more involved in is educating myself more involved so that I can help the community. This is getting totally out of hand. My daughter was really literally crying, trying to figure out how she's going to be able to take care of her two kids as being a single mother.
I think so for all of this, I think it's important for everyone is as we start to realize the impacts to our families and our work that we do, to make sure we just communicate that individual impact to our state elected officials and to our federal elected officials. And Anita, even Representative Gwen Moore. So Representative Gwen Moore is a staunch supporter of nutrition programs. But as of, I think last week, Friday or Monday, Representative Gwen Moore even hadn't signed on to a specific bill to protect SNAP in the budget reconciliation process. Everyone's eyes have been shifted to Medicaid, and Medicaid is a huge, huge deal. Um, but as that happens, it's it's important to make sure that because I feel like what's going to happen with school meals is death by a thousand cuts. What could happen is that all of these things that no one is coming in and saying no longer is any kid going to be able to get free school meals. No one's coming in and saying we're eliminating the school lunch program. No one's coming in and saying we're eliminating the school breakfast program. But the amount of red tape, administrative burden, and indirect cuts to the program is going to make it incredibly difficult for families and school staff, and it will drop people from the program. It will make it incredibly more expensive to be able to run and tougher to be able to run any sort of program, even if a school wants to provide free breakfast, lunch, after school meals, or summer meals to students. And you're going to see childhood hunger increase, and you're going to see stigma increase as well, and all the negative impacts of the current system that we have with school meals could happen.
I think the
So
other thing we're going to lose, Matt, is some of the efficiencies that we've gained over
yeah.
the last few years, like with direct cert and with programs, the safety net that has been built. When we start cutting little piece of those, it's like pulling the net apart. So you just lose a lot of that efficiency. So you're exactly right. And it's even more. I mean, it puts more burden then on these other agencies to develop their own system to prove that someone really needs the program. And it just seems like we're going backwards in so many ways.
The state of Wisconsin can step up. We're in a very fortunate position because we have a multi-billion-dollar budget surplus. For better or worse, well, for worse, the state of Wisconsin never expanded Medicaid coverage. And so a lot of states, when they're looking at making states take on a share, I think the state of Wisconsin already burdens 40 or 60% of Medicaid costs. So it likely won't, any sort of increase in state share or floor in state share for Medicaid might not impact Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, I think this is also why the work that this coalition is doing is so important, is because the state of Wisconsin has an opportunity and has the funding to be able to help plug holes of things that could be happening in Washington, D.C. Any other questions, comments?
So have you thought about putting together, Matt, like a one-page summary? I don't know. I'm thinking of like a Venn diagram or something like that, that would be, because I know Anita was approached by a couple people on the committee after she spoke, asking for more information. And I guess the thing that was astonishing to me was how people didn't know things. So like one of the things that Anita and I have been working on is she's going to get back to one of the people, and I'm speaking for you, Anita, but jump in, just giving the committee more information about how other states have been able to manage this and navigate this. So it's like other people have figured out the systems. Can we design a system that has a comprehensive ask for all of that?
Yes. What she's saying is that when she came over there and she talked to me, and told me I did a very good job at my speech, but she said that I should have came in with more data, more stating what other states had did, and it would hold more value on my testimony. So
Who was it that said this?
um I sent you her picture. I'm sorry, I'm not really good with
You said,
them.
I mean,
It
you
was,
did you did send me 12 pictures. So I don't know which one we're referring to.
it's the person on the committee that's from Wauwatosa and West Milwaukee. Is it Ruth? Uh,
I'm sorry, I apologize, but I know her name. But I did like her feedback, and what she said, Matt, did make sense. You know what? When I come in the next time, I'll be more prepared in telling my story, how it's affecting me. She said I did a very good job on that, but she said I should have lined it up what other states are doing.
I think that's great. Um, I mean, we can come back with that. I think that's fine. I still always feel that the most important thing is to tell a story from the heart. It's what most folks have said to focus on, especially at these hearings where you have hundreds of people speak. And it is tough paying attention to one person after another come up and talk about numbers. And like, I know from watching the committee, you see when they look at their phones and you see when they look up from their phones and start listening. And it's when someone tells a story about how something impacts them, and not just some random story, but a specific policy measure that impacts them. Like, I still feel that that's the most powerful thing to do. But yeah, I like 100%. I'm glad that they asked, like, let's find out which representative or senator it was and get them the information that they need. I love it. I love it. My hope is that one of the reasons why they paid attention and came up to you, not only is it because it's their job, but also because of the poignant story you told.
I'm curious, Kim and Anita, just trying to think about, because that's one of the things as as coalition leadership team is trying to think like what types of handouts. And I know we've got a general one for healthy school meals for all that's explaining, trying to encapsulate the mini layered onion that school meals and funding, trying to explain that simply, and that, you know, the estimated cost to taxpayers is at $60. But are there other points they wanted? Like, are they, you know, talking about all the different cuts that Matt's talking about here today? Like, I'm trying to think of like what we have right now and what we could make to help, um, if those questions come up at future joint finance, or just to communicate that. So do you know what specifically numbers they were looking for, or like what they wanted from other states?
When she came to me, she said, Anita, you did a very good job, because I did have their attention. They were all looking up at me. I did have, like you said, everybody heard my story. I told my story, how it's affecting me, how I'm not able to put food on the table, and I told that. But then I didn't say, well, the state of Michigan, they have, people have the same problem I have. I'm not the only one. So she said I should have referred it to, like, told my story, and then said it's a known fact that the state of Wisconsin have free lunch and free breakfast meal, and it's working for them. The percentage, she told me to come and address it like that. I respected her feedback, and that's what I was saying. I'm going forward, doing the why, and I'm doing all of that, but I'm gonna next time, you know, make sure that I say, now the state of Michigan is doing this and they're eating lunch and this is what they're doing. She says for some reason or other that draws their attention when you come
Great.
like that.
Gotcha. So
I
I'm
think that's great
thinking,
feedback.
oh, go for it, Matt.
Sorry. Go
Oh, no, I think, yeah, echo that, Matt. It's great feedback. And I think that helps. It sounds like we really should tie in information from Minnesota and Michigan, because they're our neighbors. They've done
Right.
this,
That's what she said.
and amplify that. Okay, that's helpful in knowing. We're gonna work on that. We're adding that to the to-do list. Thank you. I'll just also echo too, for anyone who's going to a joint finance committee hearing, definitely those personal stories. Caitlin and I, and others were up in Kaukauna, And we could absolutely tell, and Mike, Caitlin, myself, and others, when you told that when folks told those personal stories, also when they changed the the pitch, the volume, the flow of how you were talking, made a huge difference. And I know for me, it was like when I was hearing those numbers from different people get like rattled off of like 1,200, and it was, you could see people kind of spacing out. But when you just went in and were like, this is the story, or Mike asked a question and then walked away, and it was
That was
just
mic
so
drop
impactful.
moment. Yeah. I do have a statistic that I think that would be easy for you guys to share. And Allison, maybe we can send it out with the meeting recap. But Tufts University did a study that we all like to reference about how school meals are healthiest food kids eat in a day. They did a second study recently and found that Massachusetts, here, I'm going to read it to you guys. New research from Tufts University proves that continuing a school meals for all policy can save Massachusetts $152 million in direct medical costs and productivity annually among adults. So $152 million they're thinking it's going to save in the long run for adults, and they are putting up $175 million a year. So I did the math at one point, it's 80 something percent return on investment, which is a huge statistic. I don't know if we've had data like this before, but I will get Allison that link and they can send that out. So at least you have something you can share from a state that's been doing this for a while.
That's huge. That's a huge figure.
That was Representative Margaret Agney. Her name is spelled Arney. Did you get it, Matt?
No. Just shoot me a text message.
Oh, well, her name is Margaret.
All right. I'll look it up.
Okay, I'll send you a text.
I'll drop it here in the chat, Matt. I think it's this person, or Anita, maybe you can confirm too. Wauwatosa Assembly District 18. I think I've got it there.
Great. Awesome.
I just wanted to add, I feel so after our joint finance committee speeches in Kakana, we met and we kind of talked about how the farm portion seemed to be powerful, like tying in Sherry and Beth. Today I met with Senator Wall at one of our schools, and he really, like, that was the one thing he caught. He's like, I think that you guys need to really lean into that, and it will, I mean, he's supportive of this, but he's like, I think that is a great way to at least get some conversation started more with the farmers. So I just wanted to add that as a point.
Yeah, we've been hearing that anything nutrition related to, really bipartisan, is bringing up farmers. When we met with members of Congress, the only thing they want to know about is like, tell me about the farmers that like need help. No, yeah, totally right on that.
I want to add into just the power, we've talked about it, every coalition meeting, but that power of storytelling. And it is amazing how much it snowballs. Before folks hopped on, Caitlin and I were chatting, and it was going, do you feel like you've just given so many interviews this week? And yes, I will say, like, words are not coming easily to me today, because it was one thing on Tuesday and then yesterday and another conversation. And it was all building off of, doing that initial storytelling and getting it out there. And then other people, can I interview you? Can we talk about this? What does this mean? So, like, even if you're like on the edge, deciding, do I share something? Do I not share it? And that it just builds this amazing momentum.
As annoying and stupid, not stupid, that's the wrong word. I'm with Allison, I can't get the words out. As stupid as you feel giving the interviews, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it makes you feel stupid when you're talking. As it can be, I'm with Allison. amount of interest in what we're doing right now has gained so much momentum, and we don't want to push that down. So keep telling your stories because it's obviously working.
Absolutely. Mike, you said it. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Absolutely. I can't tell you the number of times, and you've probably heard me on here, just it feels like I'm rambling on and it sounds like I'm not making sense, but it's heard. We're our own worst critics. I know I'm my worst critic of myself, but keep sharing your story. Keep at it. And yeah, Mike, speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Absolutely. Matt, anything else you care to share or any other questions from folks?
Yeah, and otherwise housekeeping, other stuff.
We're gonna keep moving forward, folks. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but we're gonna keep making our way through this. And Matt, thank you as again for amazing presentation as you always do and helping to answer all those questions. Because I know for sure I'm always like, how does that work in government? What is it? And it's like I know the person that I text or I go to is Matt, and another amazing presentation. So thank you so much.
Well,
Here,
thanks
here.
everyone's hard work. Yeah, you know where to find us. Shoot us an email. Let us know if there's any questions or follow up. Otherwise, I hope I see some friends in Wausau.